Right, okay, let's look at the DXY. What is the DXY? DXY is an index, and it's an index that measures the performance of the US dollar versus principally the euro, but also the British pound, the Japanese yen, and a few others. Okay, so the US dollar index gives us a number, and that number has fluctuated between around about 60 and 160 over the last 50 or so years. So I'm using an analogy here, and the analogy is that the US dollar index is bouncing up and down inside an elevator, and it's jumping up versus other currencies, and it comes plunging down, then it jumps up, then it comes plunging down, then it jumps up. But the entire thing is contained within a box, and this box is dropping like an elevator. What do I mean by that? Well, inflation is going on all the while. The elevator started up here in the 1970s, when the US dollar came off the gold standard, and in 1973, 1974, the US dollar index, as it was then, began to fall. All of the currencies, paper currencies, began to be affected by inflation. So the elevator began in 1973, and it is now down here. All the while, from 1973 to now, this is the US dollar index within the elevator. That's the entire US dollar index history from 1970s to now, all contained within that box. And the box is continuing to drop as inflation continues to overpower everything that's going on inside that box. So the entire dollar index, that's the US dollar, the British pound, the Japanese yen, and the other currencies that make up the US dollar index are all falling. The Japanese yen was a little bit of an exception to that. It made up just a little over, I think it's 10 or perhaps close to 15% of the US dollar index. I can't remember the exact number, but that small part of the US dollar index, the Japanese yen, was not actually falling against inflation. It was actually slightly gaining against inflation for many, many years. But the Japanese yen is now also being affected by those inflationary forces, and Japan also has inflation now. So the Japanese yen is being affected by that inflation, but Japan did not have inflation for many, many years until very recently. So this recent outbreak of inflation in Japan is starting to also feed into this reaction that's going on within the US dollar index, within this elevator that is sinking. And the elevator is going to keep on going down as long as inflation is overpowering all of these reactions within the dollar index. We can track that with the producer price index. It was around about 30 in the 1970s. It's around 300 now, so it's multiplied by 10. The US dollar index and the dollar strength against those other currencies hasn't multiplied by 10, and that's why the elevator is going down. Where is it going? I don't know, but the producer price index is just going up and up and up and up. We can use another inflation measuring tool, that's gold. And gold has moved from around about $80 at the beginning of 1973, and it's at $1,800 now. So it's moved up by over 20 times. So gold has risen over 20 times, but the US dollar index has not risen anywhere near 20 times. As I said, it's always been contained in a range between 60 and 160. So even when the US dollar index goes on a massive run, it doesn't even, well, particularly more recently, it doesn't even double its number. So it doesn't, down here it might be 70 or so, and up here it might be somewhere around about 100, 105, 110. So it's not even doubling. Whereas gold is doubling, then it's doubling again, then it's doubling again, then it's doubling again. So you can see how inflation and any measure of inflation, whether it's the PPI or gold, is overpowering everything that's taking place within this rapidly descending elevator. And it's dropping like a rock, because outside of that elevator, you've got the forces of inflation raging. So it might look as though the US dollar is jumping up and gaining, but gaining against currencies that are also in free fall. So the whole US dollar index and all its constituent parts are in free fall against inflation. And that is the point to finish on. The US dollar index moves are the focus of so much short-term attention, but if you zoom out and look at what's really happening, whilst everyone's attention is being distracted, you can see in this chart precisely what's happening, and this will end very badly for very many people because of the implications of inflation and loss of purchasing power, and loss of purchasing power accelerating during this particular period that we're in at the moment, with high energy costs, rising gas and electricity bills for millions upon millions of people across the developed world. Okay, that's it. That's my damning summary of the US dollar index, and I hope you found that useful or interesting, or both. Okay, that's it for me for now, and more later. Bye-bye.